Hello, this is how to install the Linux operating system postmarketOS in a QEMU virtual machine using the KDE Plasma desktop. This is the wiki page. This is the homepage, postmarketos.org. We want to install postmarketOS, not similarly to how we would install it on a mobile phone, but in a similar way that we would install it on a laptop or a desktop computer. Install tab. This is the list of supported hardware devices, and there's a generic x86-64 EFI system with options for postmarketOS stable or edge. So let's go with the stable version. This is a directory structure. In the future there will be a operating system installer. I did not manage to have this working. And in the meantime, there are pre-made images with KDE Plasma and other desktops. We're choosing the newest version, and the only file in there, the file with extension img.xz. So it's a compressed image file that you can then also enlarge using the command line truncate. Let's try to find some installation instructions. Installation guide. We're in the postmarketOS wiki, and in here we're looking for the exact installation guide for the hardware that we're using, which is the generic x86-64. At the chapter generic, there's the first item here, generic x86-64. So the URL is wiki.postmarketos.org/wiki/generic x86-64. Okay, in here it says that if we don't like the size of the img file, so the img file is a pre-installed operating system. So it's a similar to a QEMU virtual hard disk where the operating system postmarketOS has already been installed. So it contains partitions, there's a bootstrapper, there's a GPT probably partition table, a bootloader, and a main partition for slash. And we can increase the size of the partition table and of the main partition to any size that we want using this command line, which is truncate. In this example, they show how to enlarge the main partition to 20 gigabytes. But we'll want way more because we want to develop inside this virtual machine. So usually, when you install a Linux desktop operating system, you're creating a virtual machine from scratch with an empty virtual hard disk. Then you're booting into a live CD media, either from a USB drive or from an ISO file. And then there's an installer application, either text user interface one or a graphical user interface one, where you probably follow a wizard, you select where the operating system needs to be installed, the name of the administrator, user, password, partition scheme, etc., etc., and then the operating system gets installed to the virtual hard disk. But this is different. In here, we have the virtual hard disk already created for us, and when we create the virtual machine, we tell the virtual machine, hey, please use this virtual hard disk and don't use any ISO files. So let's do this. So we have downloaded the file with extension img.xz. The first thing that we want to do is to uncompress it. It's compressed using xz, and the size compressed is 2 gigabytes. So that would be on xz, and the name of the file. Be careful that the original .img.xz file will be deleted. So eventually make a copy, a backup of the img.xz file before uncompressing it. So from 2 gigabytes, we went to 6 gigabytes. And this is not enough. We're going to go to 200 gigabytes. So this would be the command line. Truncate -s space 200 uppercase G, and then the name of the file. Okay, and now the size of the file is 200 gigabytes. Let's create the virtual machine. The instructions on how to create a virtual machine are at the end of the wiki page. After it says how you can increase the size of the IMG, it tells you how to create the virtual machine. And the instructions are actually instructions for Virtual Machine Manager, which is the virtualization software that I actually use. So I'm on a Linux operating system, Ubuntu 25.10. I have Virtual Machine Manager installed, and QEMU, KVM, etc. So let's do what the instructions say. File, new virtual machine, import existing disk image, forward, browse this 200 gigabyte file. You can choose any recent operating system. I'm going to go with Arch Linux. Forward, 10 gigabytes random access memory, half of the CPU threads, so 8 vCPUs out of 16. Let's name it PMOS. Customize, finish. Okay. So it says that we want to change from BIOS to UEFI. So let's do that. We keep the settings from the Arch Linux virtual manager virtual machine template, but we do some changes. So we keep the newest motherboard, we change from the older BIOS to the newer UEFI. We keep the rest of the settings. There's just one disk, which is virt.io. I'm not sure if that works or not, but the instructions clearly say that we should switch the disk type to SATA, so let's do that. So this is the virtual hard disk. We switch disk bus from virt.io to SATA. We keep the rest, so network interface card virt.io. Eventually, to be extra sure, let's go with the previous best option, which is Intel 1000. We need the USB tablet, and we keep the rest of the settings. Okay, let's begin installation. Again, we're not really installing the operating system, we're just booting into it. Okay, this complains that the virtual disk doesn't support UEFI secure boot, which is okay. Let's disable secure boot in the UEFI. So I press the enter key. Device manager, secure boot configuration, attempt secure boot. I have pressed the enter key once. And now it asks that I reset. So let's go F10 to save. Y, and then escape a number of times to reboot the computer. Reset. Okay, so this is the first time that the virtual machine boots from the virtual machine hard disk. Something is not okay. The operating system is looking like this, a black screen, and it seems to be using, I don't know, one CPU core 100%. So either it's doing something really important and long, or it probably requires a reboot. We'll see. I have force restarted the virtual machine, and that's it. And now it has started correctly, and it even started really fast. So let's see some of the instructions. So the virtual image, the virtual disk image, has a user that's named user, and the password is 147147. It's written in multiple places in the install instructions pages and in some wiki pages. But this is the instruction. The default user account is named user, this guy. And its password is 147147. And this is the first time that the user logs into KDE Plasma. The graphical user interface session. The session has been prepared. Let's see what if we're using X11 or Wayland by default. We're using Wayland. Let's see if we already have the X11 session pre-installed. And we do, so we can switch between the KDE Plasma X11 session or Wayland session. This is my wiki page and mariusp.github.io. This is the way I install operating systems. I try to use this software, the virtualization software, as little as possible. I try to be able to connect to most virtual machines, both using SSH, but also in graphical user interface mode, preferably using the remote desktop protocol. Otherwise, I try to use the VNC protocol. Why? Because I want to be able to freely resize the resolution of the KDE Plasma session inside the virtual machine. And I also want to be able to copy and paste text between the host computer and the virtual machine. I already have instructions for a similar operating system, Alpine Linux. postmarketOS is built on top of Alpine Linux. So fortunately for us, we already have the Plasma X11 session pre-installed out of the box and also available. I'm not sure if the Plasma X11 session is still available in Alpine Linux. And let's see, maybe we are lucky, maybe we can install in a similar way the remote desktop protocol server or VNC server, or at least the OpenSSH server on postmarketOS. So we have instructions for Alpine Linux. Let's see if they work on postmarketOS. So let 147, let 147. Let's prove that we're in the X11 session. and we are graphics platform X11. Okay, next up, let's see if we can enable the SSH server. Do we have the KDE terminal emulator pre-installed? We do. Let's pin it. Let's make it a favorite. So when we start the KDE Plasma start menu, we automatically can see console. Let's see if we can become super user. And we can. This is really bad, the fact that I keep forgetting the default password of the user. So we'll keep the user. It's a user that's a sudoer, but let's change its password. Current password. Let. Okay. New password. Okay. And now we can go back to our procedure, do as su. Let's see if they have sudo. Yes, they do. So probably they have installed the binary packages for doas and for the shim that makes an executable named sudo that that uses doas as a backend. Okay, apk update. So this is similar to how you would use on a Debian like operating system. So it just fetches the metadata, the list of packages that can be installed from the remote repositories. And we can already see that it actually uses the full Alpine Linux main repository, the full Alpine Linux community repository, and then there's two more repositories on top specific to postmarketOS. So postmarketOS and postmarketOS systemd. So Alpine Linux main, Alpine Linux community, postmarketOS, and postmarketOS systemd. Okay, let's try to install all of the packages that have newer versions. apk upgrade. There's just two binary packages. This is probably the Linux kernel that we're currently using is going to be upgraded. It uses Linux LTS version. It's creating the initial RAM file system, updating the bootloader, and at this point we should be restarting the computer. Let's see if reboot actually uses systemd and actually works. It actually uses systemd shutdown. We can see it written at the top of the virtual machine here. Systemd shutdown waiting for process pbs splash to finish. This is probably the issue that many Linux operating systems don't tell systemd shutdown to wait a very short amount of seconds for processes that are just stubborn. The default setting is, I don't know, 120 seconds or something, so which is really huge. Processes that don't respond processes that refuse to shut down correctly will not shut down correctly if you wait 120 seconds. It just makes the user experience not great. So this timeout should be, I don't know, 10 seconds. After that, the process should be killed. Of course, we're not gonna wait. Let's just reboot. Doesn't work. Force reset. Okay, so that was the UEFI part. The bootloader immediately chooses the first boot option, which is a good user experience. I can use my new password. Okay, so we have the latest updates installed. Let's make me feel a bit more comfortable at the command line. Copy paste doesn't work, of course not. Let's make copy paste work. So apk search, is there such a thing? And there's an OpenSSH package and an OpenSSH server package. Which one should we use? It's going to install OpenSSH client and OpenSSH server, which is okay. Now we should be able to log into the virtual machine without using the virtual manager console, graphical console spice. So let's see if this theory is correct. Let's see the network interface card of the virtual machine. This integration where you can see from outside the virtual machine the IPv4 address that has been assigned to the virtual machine doesn't work for some reason. So we'll need to be logged into the graphical session to see that. Let's see if IP exists. Yes, IPA exists. And the IPv4 address ends with 17. So let's connect to the virtual machine. SSH, the username is user at 192, 168, 122, and then 17. 192, 168, 122, and 17. And it says that connection is refused because the OpenSSH server is just installed, it's not enabled. And this operating system uses systemd. So let's become super user. Let's find out the name of the SSH, the OpenSSH server. It's SSHD, and we'll want to enable the systemd service. So enable, which means will be enabled if we reboot. Now means it will also be enabled right now. SSHD. Okay, let's try to connect. And now it works. Okay, so we can now freely copy paste, and we can also resize the text user interface connection to the virtual machine as we want, which is important. Okay, so let's see what we do. We're installing some text user interface apps. Bash git midnight commander and a text editor Emacs, no X. Okay. We can change the shell of both users, the user root and the current user. Let's try that. Let's see what shell we have currently. We're connected via SSH. Which is this guy. So this process tree. We start with SSH. We're using the shell ASH. So the Debian family of Linux operating systems has Dash, Debian Almquist shell, and this is ASH. I'm not sure if it's part of BusyBox or what is that. And it's part of BusyBox. So let's try to switch the user root. The default shell of the user root should be bash. And PS3. And we have a bash in here. So after we become super user, we're using bash. So that's good. Let's do the same thing for the user. Okay, so SSH, and it has started the shell bash. We don't need to install X11, it has already been installed. We don't need to install KDE Plasma, it already works correctly. We don't need to configure SDDM, it already has been installed and configured correctly. The software that we're after are the two binary packages, xrdp and xorg xrdp. So let's try to do that. Okay. And it says that OpenSSL was not found. What is that? How do we run the post install scripts of xrdp and xorg xrdp? I don't know. Okay, so this is what it wanted. There's a post install script for the binary package xrdp, which creates the initial cryptography. Okay. But then we're instructed that we should use the default ini system in Alpine Linux, which is not systemd, is I don't know, probably OpenRC, to enable two services, xrdp and xrdp-sesman. And I'm not sure if I know how to install these as systemd services. I'm not sure if systemd can find the OpenRC service scripts for xrdp because we're probably installing the xrdp package from the Alpine Linux binary package repositories, not from the post-market binary package repositories. So probably the packages that come from the repositories from post-market, the two ones, are enhanced to have systemd configuration files, whereas the ones that come from the Alpine Linux binary package repositories, the community and main, will probably not contain systemd scripts configurations. So rc minus update does not exist. xrdp.service configuration file does not exist. I guess that when postmarketOS has switched to systemd, it has created an additional systemd feature where systemd can manage OpenRC scripts. So binary packages that only contain OpenRC scripts for setting up system services. Systemd should be somehow able to enable, disable, start, stop those services that have no systemd configuration files because they come from the Alpine Linux repositories. But I totally don't know how to do this. Okay, we need to have a configuration file for not the user root, so the user. We can actually create this file. Emacs. And the content is probably this one. Control XS, Control XC. We can see that the executable start plasma -x11 actually exists by using autocompletion. So start plasma x11 does exist. It's an executable and it's in the path environment, in one of the directories in the path environment variable. Now, how do I start xrdp and xrdp assessment? And should this be run as the user root or as the user? Okay, let's see, xrdp. Doesn't say anything. We probably want to run it in the foreground to see the standard output. So let's try to kill it. So it did run, it did background itself when I ran the command line xrdp-k, which means --kill, shut down xrdp. It found the process to shut down. Okay, no daemon or -n. Okay, let's try to connect using SSH again. So SSH user at .17. Okay, become super user. And what we wanted is the other daemon service xrdp-sman. It does have a help command line parameter. So we want the same thing, -n or --, no daemon. And it doesn't output any errors. Who knows, maybe it will work. And now we try to connect to the virtual machine using the remote desktop protocol, using the Linux RDP client, which is this guy. So the username is named user, and we want an initial resolution 1080p. The IPv4 address ends with 17. And then we want the best features possible, including we want to be able to easily resize KDE Plasma, so / dynamic minus resolution. And for some reason it doesn't work. The next step would be to see if there's a firewall inside, and disable it if there's such a thing. So SSH user, and we would actually want to use something similar to netstat to find out if the remote desktop protocol default TCP port is, if there's a server listening on that port. So how do we do that? There's netstat. Okay. Let's find the command line. So I searched on Google the remote desktop protocol, and says that by default the RDP server will listen on TCP port 3389. Okay, and 33, a ton of servers with 33, but it's not TCP, it's Unix sockets. Yeah, so I cannot prove that the TCP server is running for the RDP protocol. Something does seem to happen, so I searched on Google how to use netstat to find out processes that are listening on TCP ports. One of the possibilities is netstat -2plan, and this does find out the TCP port 3389, but from what I see, I'm not sure if this is TCP version 6 or not. But the correct process is listening there, which is XRDP. Next up, we'll want to find out if there's a firewall installed and enabled by default on postmarketOS, and uninstall it or disable it. So I searched on Google postmarketOS firewall wiki. I guess that there's a wiki page for the postmarketOS operating system regarding firewall. And it says that postmarketOS version 2106 or higher does use NF tables if there's enough Linux kernel support. Okay, the version that we're on is postmarketOS 25.06, which is higher than version 21.06, which means that probably NF tables is enabled and running. And it says that there's a list of default rules. If you install the SSH server and enable it, then incoming SSH, so the SSH server will be able to serve and you'll be able to connect to it over Wi-Fi. I'm not sure what these things mean. Allow all outgoing connections on all interfaces. Okay, but on incoming, over cell, data, over USB. I'm not sure if the text in here is correct. What about normal Ethernet network interface cards? Okay, so let's find out if the service is actually running. I'm not sure why it says by querying OpenRC in here. So it says that there's an nftables.service file in the correct place /usr/lib/systemd/system. It's enabled. So let's first of all try to, let's see the list of rules. TCP dport accept command accepts SSH. So it accepts SSH over anything, not just over USB network interface cards or Wi-Fi network interface cards. Okay, so we want to disable nftables if that's enough. I'm already the user root. So systemd disable right now. And there are no NFT list rules set. There's no output. Okay. Let's try to connect again. And it actually asks for a password. That was totally unexpected. I do trust. Hooray. Okay, and I have the bug that's probably in the remote desktop protocol client. It doesn't tell KDE Plasma to resize if it starts with a large enough size, whatever. So let's make it start with a smaller size, especially the height. So the height, let's make it smaller than 1080p, which is the resolution of the monitor. Okay, right now we can see the entire virtual machine, including the main KDE Plasma panel, but we can also resize. And when we resize the FreeRDP remote desktop protocol client window, it will tell KDE Plasma to resize. And we can actually see the resolutions that the FreeRDP remote desktop protocol client tells KDE Plasma to use. So 958 by 1008, 958 by 510, and when maximized 1920, which is the entire width of the monitor, and then height just 1008 because it needs to leave a bit of room for the KDE Plasma main panel on the host computer and for the FreeRDP title bar or the window title bar. Okay, so incredible. It's totally incredible to me that I got this far, which totally satisfies me. I have the postmarketOS operating system installed in a large enough virtual hard disk, 200 gigabytes. I have enough space for development. I have installed the correct desktop environment, the one that I always use, which is KDE Plasma. It's probably a new enough version, KDE Plasma 6, Qt 6.8.3, and I managed to connect to the virtual machine both using SSH and in graphical user interface mode using FreeRDP. Okay, be careful to not be logged into the graphical user interface session, both in the virtualization software and also from the RDP client, because systemd only supports one graphical user interface session connection per user, so it's just safer to always log out from everywhere, including from the virtual software, the virtualization software, and then just connect from the remote desktop protocol client. And the remote desktop protocol client will behave as you want, as you expect, in the sense that it's going to keep the session alive. It's going to keep the X server alive, all of the applications alive, placed on the correct position if you just close the remote desktop protocol connection. Okay, let's prove that copy-paste of text works. Let's see if we have Kate installed. We do. Make it pinned, add to favorites. Let's copy some text. From the host towards the guest. So towards the virtual machine. And back. So it works both directions, copy-paste of text. Everything's extremely snappy. We're in the X11 session. We have transparency. Everything works. All of the graphical user interface applications look and work, behave correctly, and they're snappy and fast. You would just not say that this is a virtual machine and you're connected remotely using the remote desktop protocols connection. Okay, so at this point, I'm just going to do the things that I usually do. So let's make the panel, main KDE Plasma panel not floating. So right click on the panel and add more widgets. Click on this new button, show panel configuration, not floating, exit edit mode. Okay. Let me change some things in KDE Plasma. So fonts, subpixel rendering, RGB, hinting, full. So everything, all of the things that I just do seem to just work here. The cursor size, make it way larger. Edge, no screen edges, and outer 15. Okay. What else could we do here? So we know how to install software from the command line, just become super user. The command line tool for installing and managing packages is called APK. There's the possibility to search for packages. There's Firefox ESR and Firefox is already pre-installed as the web browser, which is correct because this is the recommended web browser by the KDE community. That's how a Linux operating system that installs KDE Plasma should do. It should pre-install Firefox. Okay, it also shows an app store, which I'm not sure if it's going to work or not, if it's going to support Alpine style binary packages or not. Okay, it's trying to fetch updates. So there's indeed a Alpine binary packages backend for the KDE Discover App Store. It's enabled by default. We can already see the four repositories for APK binary packages that we have configured by default. So Alpine main, Alpine community, postmarketOS, and postmarketOS systemd. I would recommend that you don't edit the repositories from KDE Discover. There might be, I know, issues. So it's simpler to just go to the source, edit the correct text files, probably from /etc, and that's it. And surprisingly, even more, there's the KDE Discover App Store Flatpak pre-installed and the FlatHub Flatpak Remote enabled by default. Wow, which provides a pretty complete experience of installing and uninstalling software in graphical user interface mode without needing to resort to a terminal. Let's see if we can actually uninstall software. There's no software to uninstall. What is camera? So KDE Discover was running. KDE Discover should start, but it has already started, so it's just reusing the existing process. It's navigating to the GNOME project camera, which I'm not sure if that's the application that's installed. The application is probably Coco, I'm going to guess. Let's find out how we can get the list of binary packages that are installed on Alpine Linux. I searched on Google Alpine Linux how to list installed packages. It says that I probably want APK info. This just lists the names of the packages without version, without anything else. So let's see if indeed we have Coco. And we don't. So what is this interesting software? Camera. Very, very mysterious. It doesn't start. We don't know its name. Okay. Let's try to install a bit of software and then make sure that we can actually uninstall it. So how do we do that? All applications. What application do we want to install and uninstall? Let's go for Ocular. So we have Ocular from Flatpak, Ocular probably from APK. So it says install from APK. The meta info, the upstream information for APK repositories is probably not great. I don't see images, for instance, screenshots for this application. Authorization denied. Of course, I'm not elevated as the user root. Okay, so there are issues there. APK add. Let's try to uninstall it from the start menu. So that's Office. Right click on Ocular, uninstall. And it goes to the wrong page, goes to the page for FlatHub, not to the page for APK. So a number of issues in the KDE Discover App Store. It navigated to the wrong page where when I selected to uninstall the application Ocular from the KDE Start menu, it refused to install the APK for Ocular because it refused to elevate, to do something similar to sudo. But probably installing from FlatHub would work. Let's see how we can have the same application installed twice. It says that there is some progress by the fact that I can see the button cancel. The fact that it's requiring the sudo password twice in under a minute, that's always a bug. Super user password should be asked once and then cached. Bug, bug, and bug again. I guess that it's requesting the sudo password for each and every Flatpak binary package that's being installed, because when we install Ocular, it's going to actually want to install, I know, the free desktop runtime, the KDE runtime, and other Flatpak packages. I know, translations, icon themes, widget themes, etc. We can actually look at the list of Flatpaks that get installed. Yeah. Top call generator issue. Very important bug. Not requesting the sudo password more than once in 15 minutes from the same application, from KDE Discover. Yeah, the KDE community wants to improve FlatHub as much as possible, wants people to use KDE Plasma and FlatHub as much as possible. And we also want to have the KDE App Store Plasma Discover work correctly with FlatHub, but currently it does not because it requires the password way too many times. Okay, so I'm the user root. Flatpak command line application is installed. So it installed at least these Flatpak packages, but maybe more. I'm not sure why it asked the super user password more than 15 times. Okay, let's see if we can start the application. Let's see if the correct application has started. Yes, it says that Flatpak and KDE Flatpak runtime. Let's see if we start it from the start menu, what happens. Office, Ocular, and somehow the Flatpak version of Ocular takes precedence over the version of Ocular that's installed from APKs. Let's see if we can start Ocular from the command line. Yes, we can. And it's the one from APK packages. Yeah, the fact that you have multiple applications with the exact same name and appearing just once in the start menu maybe is not the best experience because users do not have a choice in which to launch. Maybe some prefer the APK version, maybe others prefer the flat hub version. So they should appear, both versions should appear in the KDE Plasma start menu. Otherwise, somehow it should be prohibited to install the same application from multiple sources. But probably the simpler and better one is just to have, if you have an application from multiple sources installed, then show them all in the start menu with some suffix, like, I know, say, add to the application name also the full path to the executable, or I know, put a random emoticon there or something. Okay, so pretty impressed. Alpine Linux works correctly. postmarketOS in this case is Alpine Linux, the two repositories from Alpine Linux, plus two extra repositories from postmarketOS. KDE Plasma works correctly, SDDM works correctly, X11 works correctly, the RDP server xrdp works correctly, with the exception that I do not know how to actually start it. So if I want to run it, I actually have started both of the server processes, the RDP server processes, manually in foreground, which allows me to easily kill them. But then if the computer gets restarted and I want to connect to the RDP session, I'm not sure if the services will work just out of the box, because they use the xrdp package uses OpenRC scripts, not systemd ones. Yeah, let's try just once to restart the computer and see if the xrdp server just runs. If not, we'll need to remember this workaround, connect to the virtual machine using SSH, become super user, and then run something like xrdp space -n, and then semicolon, and then xrdp, not like that, I don't know. So you need to start at the same time xrdp and xrdp -sesman, session manager. Unfortunately, rebooting doesn't work. I'm not sure what this is, if it's the shutdown or the restart, probably just the shutdown. Yeah, this is probably a bug either in Alpine Linux or in postmarketOS, that it takes a huge time shutting down or restarting the computer, because the process PBS splash is not well behaved and refuses to stop when it's told to. And this splash screen is probably what we see on the screen right now, the logo on the center of the shutdown screen. So this is an issue, which forces me to always go force reset, which might be destructive. Okay, let's just try to connect using the remote desktop protocol client, and it totally doesn't work. Of course not. Okay, so this should be it. Again, the workaround is to connect to the computer, become super user, or let's see if this works. xrdp -n. That was one of the things. And in another tab, connect and sudo xrdp sysman -n. And then in a third tab, you will be able to connect using the remote desktop protocol. Again, make sure you haven't by accident connected to the virtual machine using the virtualization software. So this is it. Very pleasant surprise. postmarketOS installed as a Linux desktop operating system in a QEMU virtual machine using KDE Plasma. All of the things that I tried actually worked. Flatpak works, FlatHub works, the KDE Plasma App Store works. I could install all of the applications that I needed. Everything is snappy, works. I can connect in graphical user interface mode using the remote desktop protocol. So this is it. Thank you.